Welcome to our webinar this month. We're going to be talking about turning 2025 lessons into MSP project wins in 26. We're leveling up this year. Let's see. My name's Colleen. If you don't know who I am, I'm a growth marketing specialist at Moovila. I like to be in the communities. I like to talk on Discord and Reddit and pretty much anything else that Kate and the team needs me to do. That's you're getting out of me. Otherwise, I'm here with Kate and Louis. So they're my wonderful teammates. Kate is VP of Marketing here at Moovila. She's my boss and she leads a community efforts marketing team. Lots of good stuff. And Louis is our VP of Operations. So he works with a lot of our customers and does a lot with our onboarding, stuff like that. So I will leave the rest to them because they're both so smart and have great things to share.
Can I say my fun fact?
Please, please do.
Okay.
We need to know it.
My fun fact for this week, actually, I didn't get it from the book we got from the library. I got it from one of our customers who gave me this fact. So I have to give her credit. But the fact is that one stride of a cheetah can be 30 feet long.
One leap.
One stride as they're running. One stride from 1 foot down to the next can be 30 feet long.
So from
Interesting.
front toe to back toe, touching the ground.
I don't technically know like which toe we're talking about here, but I know like if you're running, like if your stride is probably what? Like your longest one is a couple feet, 30 feet. Other one that did come from the book, and this Kate, this can be your fact if you don't want to have a fact,
Go
is
go
that
for it.
is that lions, we all know that female lions do all the hunting, but female lions, they're so powerful when they leap. So like just sitting here and they leap, they can leap 36 feet. Yep.
Oh my
Interesting.
goodness.
Hmm. Yep.
And that's why I don't live in the savannah.
Yeah.
Kate,
Well,
what's your
on that,
fact?
oh, I'm stealing whatever Lewis just said is
She can have the
extra. I
lion.
did
She can
not
have the lion fact.
I did not plan a fact. Actually, this is not a fun fact, but I was seeing it in the chat. Jess Welch calling in from Houston. Lewis and I will actually be in Houston in 2 weeks. So if anyone's part of Evolve, we'll be down there for the full week, or I'll be there for the full week. Lewis will be there for half the week. So if you're in the Houston area and want to chat with any of the Moo crew, let us know.
Or go to
That,
Meow Wolf because Kate won't go to Meow Wolf with me.
with that, I can you guys see the agenda?
Yeah.
Sorry, okay. The
Yeah.
whole setup, it looks very different this time on my side than it did in December. So with that, we're gonna get it kicked off. The focus today is on the trends. This is actually our third year. Crazy to think that we have been in the channel that long, but this is our third time doing this. Kind of initial, we did kind of a light one in the past. Last year, we really looked kind of forwards and backwards, and then this year we're gonna kind of set the trends on what we predicted. So Lewis and I have done this together now for a couple of years on what we saw last year. So what we had predicted and kind of what we actually saw. We're going to go through some trends and insights for 2026, and then we'll allow you guys to ask any questions. And I know we have some current customers. Shout out to you guys that are joining. So after that, we'll be doing a technology demonstration, or if you have questions for Lewis, you guys can hang around for that, or kind of drop off if you're not interested in that portion. But today's kind of all focused on how we can kind of take what we learned in projects last year and turn that into better projects, better performance, more profitable projects in 2026. Let's see. Awesome. So if you're here, you may know who we are. If not, I'm just going to repeat this because I know we have some new people today that found us through Reddit, Discord, and all the different places we are. We are project management solution. We automate timelines so that you can trust your timelines. We natively integrate with all of the major PSAs are the more popular ones. So Halo PSA, ConnectWise PSA, Autotask, native bidirectionally synced, doing all their security protocols and tests every year. Very proud of that. We work with MSPs, I was about to say across the country, but actually around the globe. We do have a few Aussie customers, quite a few in Europe, but our predominant team is all based in North America, out of Charleston, South Carolina, as I mentioned. You can just see a couple of the MSPs we work with across the bottom. And if you're curious about hearing more from our users' perspective, I invite you to kind of check out our case study page where you can find a few of these MSPs talking about what they use us for or how they use us, that everyone's using us for projects. So with that, we wanted to start with kind of what we had predicted in 2025 would happen. So we kind of did this last January, and what we kind of thought we would see coming. And if some of these, not to be a spoiler, but I think some of these we'll kind of see a continuation of. But one of the big things we were talking about last year was just seeing a potential increase from MSP owners, MSP PMO leaders, if you're big enough to have a project management office, PMO stands for. Kind of just seeing that push on margins and project profitability. I think historically there's some service leadership index data that kind of indicated a lot of people use projects like a loss leader. Um, Lewis likes to akin that to diapers at a grocery store. Sometimes they're a loss leader. Um, and basically using projects as a means just to get clients. And as we've seen trends over the last kind of, I think that one was from 2020, 2021, as we've kind of started to see people get more serious and a lot of MSPs get into hyperscale mode, they're buying other MSPs, they're going it alone, and they're just building out larger teams. Projects are actually becoming a more core part of their business. And I think that kind of is why we were expecting to see more margin increases as people got more serious about it. And I would say, like, I definitely saw that. I know we still get questions. Lewis, kind of, you sit regularly on a lot of calls with MSPs. What would you kind of consider, like, in regard to margins and kind of what happened last year?
Sure. Yeah, I'll be interested to see what the annual report looks like for leadership index. If I had to guess, I think it'll probably actually be pretty similar, right? MSPs, it's hard, right? It's not easy. I mean, that's why y'all are here, and that's why you do what you do. And there's so much demand from customers on the ever-changing environment. And we'll get into this a little bit more, but a little foreshadowing. I mean, there's just so much around AI and people asking about it and the different models releasing every 2 weeks from different I mean, it's just, and your customers are coming to you as the IT provider asking about that. So I don't think, we're talking about it a lot. Our customers talk about it a lot. I think as an industry, though, I'll be interested to see what that looks like. If I had to guess, margins probably didn't change that much. I think we'll probably maybe see a little bit of a uptick overall in the market, but I think we might see a lot of what they were. We still, as we got a number of new customers in this year, we always do like to ask when we start to talk about finances, what's your target margin? And another question I will ask a lot when people are saying, well, our project managers need to track the budget. And I'll say, well, what about the budget? The hours or the dollars? And it's usually always the hours and the at least the timeline on the revenue, like when's the revenue going to come in? Because a lot of people still go into fixed fee and preferring fixed fee. So that's how a lot of people I feel are still looking at budgets. I'd like to continue to talk about, hey, let's look at your margin, let's set a target margin, let's drive for that project by project, month by month, quarter by quarter, and then we hit our goal for the year. So we predicted that. Maybe we're a little too early on that one, but I do think there's still a lot to focus around that, and it's hard, right? I absolutely recognize that. I absolutely recognize that I get to live in a pretend world where I get to talk about projects with MSPs, and y'all are the ones that do the work. So I say that one a lot too.
Awesome. All right, I'm playing with the settings. Can you guys let me know in the chat if you guys can see Louis when he's talking? Because things are just a little wonky for Zoom today. Um,
I can.
Either way, well, you can. Okay, perfect. Um, I'm like, oh, I was like, I think that people are only seeing me the whole time. Perfect. That makes me feel a lot better. Sorry for the technical stuff, guys. New year, new software, always. Thank you for that, Louis. Um, I think I agree. I think margins, well, we'll talk more about finances later, but we're just going to see more and more.
Yeah.
Um, Next one, standardization of service product offerings being put to use. So I think a lot of this is, we've talked about this for a while, but like templatizing your work, having more scoping and coding feedback loop. I would say for that one, I see people asking about it, but I feel like that happened less than I maybe expected. Like it's definitely still really just the larger ones that are like really focusing on the feedback loop. I would say like templates definitely happen. We'll talk a little bit about what Moovila did around templates last year, towards the end. But I do see a lot more MSPs kind of leaning into like templates, and even if it's custom work, kind of building that out a bit like Legos. But kind of what are your thoughts on kind of these areas of service standardization and what you saw in 2025?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. A lot of focus on templates, and a lot of people that came to us that were like, we know we need to work on our templates, or we know that we need templates. And work on our templates is a general term. Some were, we've got expansive templates that, we're going to onboard a client and it's going to be a 300 ticket project and we want to consolidate that and make it easier to manage. And other people that were like, we onboard a client with 2 tickets and we understand we need a little bit more in there to be able to track that. So we're seeing it both ways. We definitely saw people focusing on, coming in, we know we need to work on it and getting right in there and working on it right away. So I agree with you, spot on there, Kate. I think focus on templates, more people using them, more people, well, because you'll make them and then they'll sit there and it's hard to keep them up to date. And I agree with you. I think a lot of people have the intention of having that feedback loop between sales and operations. You have your handoff with sales before you start your project. Hey, what did you sell? What is the customer expecting? How can I build my plan around that expectation? And then on the backside of that, having the sales come back in and say, hey, this was the plan. Here's how it went. Here's what went well. Here's what didn't go well. I don't, that's still a hard thing for people to get going. And it's because you're so busy, right? And because it's a hard one to do. So I agree on those two things. I do think we'll continue to see trying to get, and that ties right into margin, right? What did sales sell it at? What was the margin sales sold it at? Where did you bring it in at? Right? Working on that collaboratively. That's hard to, ops and sales. There's always, doesn't matter what industry, right? You've got tension there, pointing fingers and whatnot. So I think that's part of it as well. I do think people will continue to try to do that. Everyone knows that it's important, right? So it's just making the time for it.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I did want to just to put in like a resource plug for people. I think we shared this a couple webinars ago. I'm going to put my email again since it was like briefly on the screen. We do have a scope creep response kit, if you're looking. So obviously like scoping, we're more talking about like pre-completing the project and like standardizing your work as you scope it. Um, Obviously there's a lot to do there. We're actually kind of exploring what can Moovila do to help you with that process maybe in the future. But for right now, as far as like scopes and process, we do have some resources. If you're interested, I'd be happy to send that to you. It comes with like some email templates, some like form examples we've seen people use of like how to have maybe a form so an MSP can request, or your client can request of your shop a scope change and things like that. So we did have a little bit come out last year that just from seeing people have those problems, we kind of learned where the market was needing some help. So if you would like that resource, feel free to reach out to me and I can send it over to you after. Um, Moving on, defined project team structures, grouping resources by like the technical expertise, maybe the type of project, project size and complexity. Um, I think we did see some shifting. Um, I'd be very curious on your take here, Louis, because I do think there was some restructuring I saw, especially in larger shops.
Yeah.
But by and far, like because I've more recently been talking to some smaller shops, like I haven't seen as much of the team shift kind of separation,
Yep.
similar to like what you talked about with CNWR a couple months or maybe last summer in your thing about them shifting. Like, did you kind of see this actually happen last year, or did it kind of go at a slower pace than maybe you were expecting?
Yeah, I think we're still seeing people realize they need resources more dedicated to projects and saying, hey, maybe it's not a formal PMO, but this resource, they're going to handle tier three, tier four tickets, and I'm going to dedicate 6 hours of their day towards projects, giving a little bit of wiggle room. We continue to see that. And that's a hard inflection point for an MSP to get to. As far as different, teams being structured and grouped by technical expertise, I saw a lot of changes around that where people are trying things and going back to other ways. I've seen people do it based on region, depending how large the organization is. I've seen people do it based on, cloud versus network. I've seen people do it based on customers, grouping customers, and these engineers work with these customers, or I've seen it based on vertical, on industry. I'm not seeing anything consistent across the board for sure. Everybody's trying to do it a little bit differently. It all depends on your organization, your customers that you're servicing. But what I will say is I did see people willing to make changes and then adjust, right? And this doesn't feel right. We're siloing engineers that they can only work on these things. We need a little bit more flexibility and diversification across their skill set. So we saw a lot of that. The other thing we saw a lot of was just continued mergers and acquisitions throughout the MSP space. So project teams and coming back to us and saying, "Hey, we just acquired a company. They have a project team. We're gonna bring those two together," and trying to figure out what's the best structure there, right? Like this group did it by customer, this group's doing it by vertical. Which way are we going to go? And maybe making that a little bit more general so you have more flexibility. So I guess if there's anything to take from all that pontificating that I just did there is it's not one size fits all. It really is focused on your customers. But I do think you get to a certain point and you're like, we have enough project work to support a resource. And I think we will always see that and we continue to see that. And when people make that switch, that is one of those taking one of those rocks out of that backpack of like, okay, this feels right. We're able to move forward on this. Again, though, you still always have to give yourself the flexibility you need to support the different areas of the business.
Yeah, you said something. I was starting to type it out, and then you said something about mergers.
Yeah.
I did want to call out if you like, on my personal page, we're not on Movila's page. Do we share this? But Lewis and I often hear, shops having team shifts because they had a merger and they're kind of grouping together projects or whatever. If you are looking for your first PM for your shop, we are happy to kind of share that with our network and kind of
Yeah.
let you know if we know of any PMs in play. Just I saw a lot of shifting last year from mergers and acquisitions that made me think of that. And it's
Yeah.
kind of a benefit to those of you that are maybe starting your PM practice at your shop. As talent kind of shifts for mergers and acquisitions, there may be some stronger PM players that have more experience in some of the stuff we generally talk about, who are in play. So
Yeah.
just something to keep in mind if you're seeing changes in your resourcing.
Yeah, that's a great
Um,
point too. And I think the other consistent thing we saw last year that we've seen forever and we know forever is that MSPs are like, which PM do I hire? What's right for my team? Do I go out and find somebody that has a PMP that does all these other things, or do I find someone that has the technical expertise, or do I find somebody that fits my culture? Right? That's always a tricky one. the PM, the project manager title is it's a tough one. If it's a tough one to fill, it's a tough one to be for sure. And that's always going to be a struggle. We saw a lot of that this past year. Had a lot of conversations at shows like, hey, I think we're ready to hire our first project manager. What should I be looking for? Do you know anybody? So yeah, Kate and I both always happy to connect you with people that we know that are out there and also, give any recommendations.
Yeah. Our last one for last year's predictions was about going beyond critical path. So working on project timelines and scheduling process. If you are new here and you aren't familiar with critical path, we will show one a little bit later.
Mhm. Mhm.
But basically this is all about like having very standard timelines. It kind of goes in with the dialed in templates, like standard timelines, standard durations, dependencies, all of those goals. And just, the more you do that, the better you can get at resourcing. And we kind of our big prediction last year was just that more people would be focusing in on this and really getting into things like smarter scheduling of resources and just be able to forecast out that need for maybe new headcount. Do you have any comments on this one, Louis? I
Yeah.
think this one did happen. I don't know if there's a
Yeah.
ton here to talk about, but
Yeah. No, there's always a ton here to talk about the critical path and timelines and all that sort of good stuff. And we saw it a lot, right? And it's a mindset change for MSPs coming from the PSA. And again, everybody, I'm biased, right? I'm talking about people that come to Moovila. Um, and again, I
yeah,
get to live in a pretend world. But you know, people come in from PSAs where you're surviving day over day. And you're like, okay, what got done yesterday? Let me go through some notes, figure out, oh, this got pushed. Let me redo these things, this, that, or the other. And you're just throwing that next time on the calendar. You're finding that next resource. And when people come into us, it's a mindset change of, hey, I'm going to structure my work plan, my work breakdown structure, my schedule, whatever you call it, your project plan. And I'm going to structure that the way I want that project to run. And then I'm going to work the other things around that, right? And understand there's flexibility and give myself more time here and flex that or the other. And we saw some people come in and I had customers that would say, well, we're not really date driven today. And I would go, that's okay. You, you're going to keep having the same problems over and over again, right? And it takes a concentrated effort for you to go, I'm gonna flip that switch. I'm gonna be date driven. I'm gonna give my resources. You're working on this week. You're working on that next week, right? And that keeps your whole portfolio chugging along. There's an awesome book out there. If you haven't read it, go check it out. It's called How Big Things Get Done, and it's all about big projects, right? And why they go poorly. And there's some wild stats in that book about the percentage of global projects, of big projects you'd think would go well, and how far over budget and how far over timeline, and they missed delivery dates on them. It is, and there's a lot of things in there. The big drivers are, think slow, plan slow, act fast, and the other one is timelines. You've got to shorten the window you're executing a project, because if you don't shorten that window, you're expanding it for more time for those unknowns to happen and those unknowns to occur. And if you're not date driven and you're not telling people to get things done by a certain point, that timeline extends. You're not able to close that project out. You're making your customers not happy. You're not, you're deferring your revenue essentially. You can't bill them whatever your progress bill is, or towards the end, you're not billing them for the project. So the longer you leave those projects open, more things go wrong. Customer calls and says, we don't want to do it. Another customer calls, they have a fire to pull things all over the place. So people get it. And we saw people coming in, they got it. They understood why project timelines are important, and the critical path is important. It's still a big change, right? And it takes time. And I think that's another one we're always going to see it. Looking back, if I'm reflecting on what we predicted, I'm like, oh, we're going to be able to predict these every year, right? I mean, this is what
yeah,
projects are in general. And I think knowing that and looking at this summary, the biggest thing that we saw was that MSPs are maturing in their professional services and their project delivery, right? And they understand that it's a big part of their business, and they understand that they need to do things differently to be able to continue to satisfy their customers and to be able provide value to their customers. So I think that's probably the biggest thing we saw in all these, right? They're not solved overnight, and it takes time on all of them.
Yeah, that's a big thing I talk to a lot of people about is that project maturity is not necessarily operational maturity. For those of you familiar with the MSP Knowledge Book, which is a great free resource, especially if you're hiring new employees into the market who've never been in the space before. It's got a lot of like, what is an MSP? What are these terms? How do all these things work? And they describe the different stages of operational maturity level. And I always chuckle because you can be very, very operationally mature, but not necessarily projects mature. I think it's a very different journey. And our hope is maybe get some more resources out this year for people around that. But it's definitely an interesting thing to see like how different MSPs kind of lead and lag on the different experience of like understanding the parts of the critical path and more of these like requirements to really become more project mature.
Yeah,
Um,
if y'all feel like, man, we're not doing things well and we're not good, do not get down on yourself. I will tell you right now, there are
very common.
very mature organizations, very large organizations out there that projects are the redheaded stepchild, right? And so do not get down on yourself. You're here, so you're trying to figure out what you can do differently, right? And just there's a lot of resources out there. It's a real thing.
Yep. On that note, I'm going to go through some data. So we do an annual research report. So we kind of noticed a couple of years ago when we entered the market, there wasn't anyone that was really surveying service leadership. Did a little tiny section on it, but no one was really talking about project management. So we have a report. I think one of my team members will drop it in the chat. If not, you can also email me for this, or if you go on our homepage, it's very easy to get to. This came out at the end of last year, and it was our second annual, so we kind of have some good numbers and comparisons now. There were over 263 unique shops, so unique MSPs that did this research and surveys for us. So we have a lot of data. And I think one of the biggest things we saw was just people realizing that projects are more critical. This increased from last year, but just starting to see that like projects are a bigger part of their business. You know, it's not just about getting new clients. I think a lot of people, especially when they're early in their MSP journey, see it as like a gateway to new, like just recurring contracts. But I think a lot more people are using this for expansion, for revenue expansion opportunities with current clients, to work on like customer satisfaction, to speed up and standardize, you know, processes like templatizing and standardizing your client onboarding. So it's like a very consistent, equal experience, regardless of the employee running it. So there's a lot of opportunities that people have around projects, and they're kind of starting to notice that this is becoming more critical. But when we ask them about like what does their project profitability look like, almost half of the MSPs said that it's hurting their margins. So there's a chunk that says they're not really sure. But there's still a lot of people out there. So out of those 263, a ton of people are still struggling with projects. So like Louis said, if this is you, don't let it get you down because
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
that don't know how to handle this and kind of what to jump in next. And we'll talk through and show some features and some different things that maybe you guys could think about this year in a minute. But just briefly, some other pieces that go in the report, if you're curious to kind of just see. And this really goes to how what Louis was saying before of like team structures are evolving and different, and you could be a large MSP and still not really be great at projects. Like there's a lot of things going on. And one of the biggest things we see, especially now doing the data kind of in repeat and being able to cross compare, is that so many aspects are very different irregardless of size. So you could be very, I mean, I think we have a client that's like a 10-person shop and they're like doing like 80% of their revenue on
Yeah.
projects. Like they love
Yeah.
projects. And then there's big ones that like aren't even doing many projects. So if you look at profitability, I love to show this chart to people that I'm talking to just because it kind of lets you see what's out there and how some MSPs are driving big chunks of their profit from projects. It's an area where if you can get more controlled, you know, you can control the more efficient you are, the more projects per person that can be handled, the better you can drive your margins and you can really drive true revenue for your business versus hardware where there's a little bit of a limited markup you can necessarily do. And then also just tools and platforms, a lot of variety. One thing that really stood out to me though is just the number of MSPs that are still trying to get by in their PSA module, and just kind of struggling through that, or even worse, a spreadsheet, and they're doing kind of double entries. So, like, if that's you, you are not alone. There are a lot of shops still doing it, and so this kind of goes with that. Like, there's still a lot of people struggling with maturity, just kind of those things alone, especially like spreadsheets, and just kind of the disconnect of that with your systems, can be a really, really big thing to hold you back. So just kind of even being here and starting to talk more about projects, I think is a good step forward for a lot of MSPs in the journey to just growing their project maturity.
And let me just throw something in there on the tools and platforms. The world does run on Excel, so we do all recognize and know that, and I also love Excel. But if you're doing any sort of duplicate entry between your PSA and something else, it's not stop. I know, and I know why you're doing it, right? But you got to try to make the tools work for you. You can't be entering stuff in two places. That's just a killer for you as a PM and for your team. And I'll also say that depending on your volume and your size and what we're showing here on the left-hand side about how much profit comes from projects, there's a certain point you can make those tools work, right? So there's a certain point if you have good process and you have structure and you're doing things consistently, you can make those tools work. And it's when you get to that inflection point of, oh, I need more, right? And oh, I can't manage that many projects in here on my own kind of deal. So, maybe take a little bit of reflection if you are entering stuff into PowerPoints and spreadsheets or Microsoft Project in addition to why are you doing that? Take 2 minutes to think about why you're doing it and what's the real reason, and maybe there's a different way to do it. But try to quit the duplicate entry if you are.
True. Speaking of painful things, one of the things we always ask is about just the things that are kind of painful for MSPs related to projects. We also kind of have an open right thing. If you get that report that Shelby shared, you can see some of that stuff. But biggest things, pricing and estimating, scheduling out their resources, inaccurate timelines. Apologies that it kind of cut off on here. Not sure what's happening there, but inaccurate timelines. So that's like not being able to kind of know what comes after other things, kind of know the order of operations in which things should be doing. Maybe you're not able to predict kind of when a project will get done. So you're quoting projects for customers, but you are doing it custom every time, and then you still can't tell, like, based on everyone's calendars and everything else, like, I think I can get it done on this date. So that's a huge challenge we see. And then the last one is the scope creep, which is kind of why the scope creep response kit came to be, and a huge one we see for like in-cycle stuff. So again, we're really focused on this at Moovila and what we can do to help you avoid that. I'd be really curious in the chat if you're willing to share. I didn't put up a poll in advance, but if you're willing to share in the chat, with your name tied to it, kind of if any of these resonate with you specifically. But again, there's even more stuff. If you read the report, there's like people kind of threw in, a lot of people, customers are the elephant in the room. Like, their challenge is getting customers to go along with it, which is part of what we kind of solve at Moovila through being able to bring customers into the platform. But just a lot of kind of pain points for MSPs. We're going to keep tracking this. We're going to keep being focused as a company on like how we resolve these. And I think if you are like, especially if you are coming on board to Moovila in the future and you talk with Lewis's team, let them know which one of these you struggle with the most, because that is something that they can kind of go off to help make sure as they go through your program, you kind of understand and kind of can see the different parts of Moovila where it can help move the needle on these pain points for you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Louis to talk through some of the trends we think we'll be seeing this year and kind of changes in projects in general, versus the market and just versus kind of what people have been historically doing.
Yeah, and just to call it out, a lot of these are probably going to look similar to 2025, really. The first one there focused on financials, and I don't know if this is just me selfishly that I keep putting this one in there, um, because I love to talk about it and it's important, but I think people looking at, hey, I'm going to hold my PM accountable against what that target margin is on that project. And again, sales to operations, that's a tough one, right? Because you need to know what that clear target is coming in. You need a line that, yep, I agree that that's where it's at. A lot of organizations are starting to do some sort of verification or review from the operations team before those scopes go in front of clients. So I think we're gonna see, I think we're gonna continue to see that. And I'm going to keep asking the question to people, when you say budget, what do you mean? Do you mean hours? Do you mean revenue? Revenue's not really budget to me in my mind, but I'm a simple that way. It's just, you've got to be more of like, yeah, it's a fixed fee project, and we thought we'd make this much margin, and we actually took this. And hours is a great place to start. So let me not knock that. That gives you a gauge for sure of where you're going to land, but it's also, you can use different resources, and people cost different amounts of money, and what's their fully burdened cost, and how do you look at that? And as Kate mentioned earlier, PM time, that is drastically always under scoped, right? Understanding how much time actually goes in to manage the project. And even if you don't have a PM, somebody is spending their time doing that on that project. So you need to allocate for it. And maybe you don't charge for it. Maybe you put it into your SG&A cost for your business, but you charge a higher margin, right? It's just thinking about those things and working towards that. So Kate's tired of hearing me talk about financials and finance and budget and whatnot. So anything to add there, Kate?
I mean, the big thing for me is the sales and operations alignment. We are not a scoping tool per se, but I know a lot of people use our templates to scope
Agreed.
faster.
Yeah.
I think one of our case studies, if you look for the one by a woman named Heather, she talks a little bit about that and how her team uses Moovila to like take a template and quickly scope. But I think that is just going to be really, really, really big, is like projects, a lot of projects fail because sales and the project team aren't aligned. And the more you can really get your team, even if like they're just seeing stuff from their project tool and like in there, I think that's going to be a bigger and bigger deal. We're seeing more companies that are bringing in a seat for their salespeople,
Yeah.
to have that account visibility. And I think like that part of financials, to like, you really love the project accountability and just all the measurement stuff. For me, it's like a lot about the alignment, because if you can't sell projects well, you're not going to get a lot more projects eventually, because word will get out. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think this will be a
Yeah.
huge one for a lot of MSPs this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Customers, you're trying to go back and sell another project, and customers like, why would I do that
I
on
would never work with you again. Yeah.
went the way that it did. Yeah. And it's, you know, whatever it was sold at, whether you're doing T&M fixed fee or whatever, you're putting some sort of number in front of the customer, and that number was figured out somehow, right? So it's, how do you make your plan match the logic that got to that number, right? Because you should operate that thing the same way you sold it there. So next one, everyone's tired of it, but I'm gonna say it: AI, automation, automation, automation. And what I think we want to focus on is I think people are starting to talk about and look at, how can I actually do project work with RPAs, with tools like Roost and Pia and all those others that are out there. How can I actually do project work? How can I, if it's setting up a new user, setting up a new workstation or whatnot, what things can I automate? And from my work plan, from my project plan, what can I do in there to help maybe trigger some of those automations, right? And let that run. So I do think that this is still early stage. I think this is one that will bleed into 27 as well too, for sure. A lot of people have been focused on help desk and automation there and AI there, but I do see it happening on the project side and people talking about it and asking about it, and some people starting to action that as well too. Another one is around, more generative AI and LLMs and project summaries. People using some agents and whatnot to read their PSA, to read other places and pull those together. But I think too, we talked about this in an internal meeting yesterday as well, is your customers are coming to you asking about AI and how they can use it. And we heard early on that, to deploy an automation, an agent, an AI for your customer, those typically require projects, right? Because you're typically setting something up and you're doing some sort of consulting engagement to figure out what your customer needs and what could be automated. So I do think that AI is going to drive more projects and more professional services revenue for MSPs as they start to look at that more, to sell that more, to use it themselves internally. It's just I know everybody says it. I know we go to every show and we hear about it all over the place, but I mean, it is a real thing, right? And especially as mainstream as it's become for not just the IT industry, but everybody.
Yeah. I would like to hop in on the like the RPA stuff. So we have with some of our PSA partners who have RPA, we've begun discussions just because like sometimes triggers can be impacted by the complexity of projects. Like the reason the PSAs aren't great at projects is because they don't always incorporate all the complexities. So we are trying to work with some of them to have more native integrations, hopefully for you guys. I would say if you use a specific tool or you're curious about using it with Moovila, we do have a read API that you can use. We have customers actively using like project early indicators into like using Roost to put it into Slack. So like the team can get notified of like status updates or as phases close. We have people doing putting our stuff through Hats AI, which is kind of a tool where you can put all your different AIs together plus all your data. So like we have examples of customers, using project data and really blending it out across their other AI and like data tools. We've spoken at some of these at shows or with them at shows on some of these, but if you have questions, definitely reach out to Louis or I, and we can kind of talk you through how we've seen others use it, or recommendations we might have based on the tool you're trying to plug Moovila in with. And with that, me mentioning things in the community, I mean,
Yeah.
my favorite subject.
Yeah. And Kate alluded to it a little bit as well too. And we heard a lot of this over the last year. And so we put out Project Hub to share templates and project plans that people can access. And I think we're just going to see more of that. And we are seeing more people talk about projects and Discord channels around projects and Reddit threads around projects, more and more. Again, I think it's just visibility, right? People understanding their importance and the community aspect of the MSP industry that y'all share, which is great, and we love it. And having those candid conversations about, well, I do things this way, how do you do them, and why do you do them? And okay, maybe I'll go try this. I think that's something just built into the DNA of MSP industry that we're going to continue to see. But I think maybe even a little bit more like, oh, you're doing a sonic firewall, I'm doing a sonic firewall. Here's exactly how I do. Oh, I've been missing that step kind of deal. So just putting as much of that content out there as possible so everybody can continue to improve.
Yeah, and I think I want to highlight, we'll talk about Project Hub a little more in a little bit, but just like it is a very community driven effort. If you are a Moovila user and you go into Project Hub, like you can see other MSPs that have submitted templates. We're always looking for more templates. You can submit those, I think, through Lewis's team.
Mhm.
or through your customer success manager. So, um, as much as I know in the MSP space, the community is all about giving back and kind of what
Yep.
can you build together. So that's really been our focus on this. And I definitely recommend if you haven't looked at it yet, check it out. Or if you haven't, like if you aren't a Moovila user, our sales team also can demo it for you as part of the the demo. Sometimes it's something they don't hop into, but if you tell them you want to learn about the templates, they can definitely cover that for you.
Yep. And then the last one already jumped into that a little bit around automation, right? I think new types of projects focused on AI, prepping data, training data, specific to your needs, your customer needs. I think we're just going to keep seeing more projects around that. We're starting to see more of those come through as well. And then of course, there's always going to be different technology and technologies coming to end of life and projects around that. Windows 11, I think there's still probably a decent amount out there that people are working on. So just always keep an eye out of, which vendors are terminating some technologies that are going to require replacements for a lot of customers, as those are, since we've come into the MSP space pretty consistently, a lot of the projects each year are around those technologies terminating.
Yeah. And I think that AI one is like really big. Like we
Yeah.
can definitely talk through that with you, but just remember like there's so many different approaches. Like people need to prep and tag their data.
Sure.
People need to be providing training. You may need to be building that bot, like Louis mentioned earlier. Like there's so many different ways that you as an MSP can tackle and offer AI, but almost all of them end up as a project. So like if you only have like one AI project, maybe think about it, chat with us. We hope
Yeah.
to have some up in Project Hub at some point. Right now, we do not, as we're kind of learning what some different MSPs are
Mhm.
doing, but um, there's so many things that you guys can do with that space. So I would be definitely like figuring, like templatizing it and selling it because there's a lot that small
Yeah.
businesses need to be able to use it securely and safely.
Yeah.
Well, with that, that's kind of all of our predictions. I did want to jump into a little bit, just showing the software so those who are new can see. Louis, do you want to talk through kind of what's on
Sure.
the screen, or would you like
Yeah,
me
yeah,
to?
yeah, yeah. So the screen that we've got up here is project timeline automation. So my soapbox I went and stood on earlier about, timelines and shortening the window that those projects are open. That this is what we're talking about here. And again, tool agnostic, you should be doing this on your projects, right? I'm going to deliver the execution piece of this thing within 2 weeks, right? So setting your dates on those tasks to get it done within those 2 weeks. And what Moovila does is Moovila makes that easier and more accurate for you, right? So again, you're building that structure. You're telling the system, hey, this should take this long over this period of time, but these things need to be done before I can start on it. And once that's done, this next thing can get going. And so this visual here is of our critical path. So we look at that structure you've built. We'll define what is the longest length from start to finish. We'll flip that to the top. That's your critical path. So as you're looking to manage the overall timeline of that project, you only have to focus on that top section there, right? You have all that other work happening below. And as those things change and they might become your critical path, that visual will change for you. Those items will go to the top. But with that, Moovila is always forecasting accurate start and due dates for every single task within that project, which then in turn helps you forecast an accurate due date against the overall timeline on that project as well. And again, that bottom section there, right? We're not going to make you go into each individual task and change those dates. You build your structure, things change. There's an update button there. You update, you review what those dates look like, and you hit save, and it updates all those dates. And that's an interesting one as well, too, not to go too far off track here, but we do have a lot of people that come in, they're like, just, push all those dates onto our tasks for us. And we're like, "Hmm, we want somebody to take a look at those, right? So it is always 24/7, 365 automating and reforecasting those. But we want somebody to go in there and say, yep, nope, these look right. I'm going to take them. And to help notify you that there are those new dates that are needed is our RPAC score. So the RPAC score on the right-hand side there is like our credit score, health score for your project. So at a high level, have I built a good plan? How do I look on my timeline? And as you start a project, you got a good score, you got a good plan. You come in Monday morning, your score is dropped into the red. At a portfolio level, that's a quick indicator for you to go, oh, something happened there. I need to go look at that, right? And then you can see that something didn't get completed. You need to follow up with your resource. Did it get done? Do you just need to update it, or do you need to reforecast that plan? And again, hit that button real quick. So giving you the tools to be able to quickly find which projects have gone off the rails, and then giving you the tools to quickly update those plans as needed. And so on the next slide, one of the things, we use the word schedule a lot coming from a project management space. And we came into the MSP space. We're like, yeah, your project schedule, your project schedule, your project schedule. And MSPs were going, oh, so it's on the calendar. And we were going, no, why does it need to be on the calendar? You have your start date, you have your due date, you have your budget, get your work done. And they're like, oh, no, we live and die by the calendar, right? And so we listened to that, we heard that, we put in the ability to schedule specific appointments on tasks in there. But then we also had to think about how can we make this easier and what can we automate there? So the visual that's cycling through the screen there is essentially saying, hey, I'm looking at this project. And on the right-hand side, I have a listing of all of the tasks in this project I want to put on the calendar right now. I've set due dates. I might be forecasting dates. I have budgeted hours. Show me where on the calendar those blocks fit, and playing that calendar Tetris for you to say, does this work? Does this not work? With our PSA integrations, we do then bring over any additional objects that are on the calendars over there. So if we talked about earlier, your project engineers handle tier 3, tier 4 service tickets. Those get put on their calendar and ConnectWise on the dispatch portal. We'll show those to you in Moovila so you're not scheduling a project block over what's on the calendar there. So making it easy for you to look at multiple tasks and schedule those out on the calendar with just a couple clicks. Again, same thing here, right? A lot of people are like, just put it on the calendar. And there's some different things out there that kind of do that. And again, there's a lot that go into projects. And as Kate said, there's a lot of complexity and a lot of people don't understand what goes into that. And that's why y'all are here and y'all are project managers or engineers or in projects in some way, right? But we give you the tools to make those changes, to look at that and quickly, right? Not having to go through and create each of them, but then hit save, look at your shopping cart and publish all of those out there. And then this one here is just a quick screenshot of the project hub that we talked about, right? So again, you're standardizing your project team, your project process, coming into Moovila, making it easy to say, let me go into that hub. I need a base template, right? My bookends, how am I going to start a project, end a project? What does that lead time to get my project started need to look like? There's network infrastructure templates in there, right? Firewall, switch, access points. There's Office 365 migrations in there. There's workstation setups in there. I think there might be some server migrations in there too.
I
We're
think so.
working for those recently. Yeah, some risk assessments, those types of things. So giving you a starting point, right? You can download those into your Moovila instance and then make whatever changes and customize those to your organization as needed.
Yeah.
Any
With
questions too
that,
that you have? Yeah,
yeah, with few
throw them in.
questions, not a ton of time left, but we'll answer any questions if people have them.
Yeah.
While you're asking your questions, please check out the resources we have on our website. I'm going to be sending out all of this stuff in the follow-up email. So I'll talk about next month's webinar. I'll send a few blogs, and I'll also send the research report and the scope creep response kit that Kate mentioned earlier. But for next month, for February, we are going to be talking about why durations matter. So the hidden driver of successful projects is what it's going to be called. We're going to have Jeremy from Network Essentials joining us, and it's going to be on February 20th at 1 o'clock probably noon. Yes, at noon. Just kidding. This one was at 1 o'clock, so it's going to be at noon. And it'll be a lot of fun. So tune in for that too. And what else do I have for you? Oh, we also have a survey at the end. Please fill it out. If there are any subjects that you possibly want to go over in potential later on webinars, just let us know and maybe you'll see it come up as a subject.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining. I don't see any questions coming through. Again, as you have project needs throughout the year, whether they be helping, what you need to hire your first PM, you're trying to solve scope creep issues. We have tons of free resources on the site, like Colleen mentioned. If you're struggling to find something specific, you can always shoot me an email. My email is super simple, kate@moovila.com. Happy to send you any of those resources. And you can also find these webinars both on our website and on our YouTube channel. So if you subscribe there, you'll see the post recording. It normally comes out like a week or two after we do the session.
Cool. Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your day. We appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Kate. Thanks, Colleen.
guys.